Yeah, great question, Ethan. So it is a very broad question, but I mean, you're sort of getting to the heart of the matter, aren't you? Right? Melodic soloing. That's what we all want to be able to do. So here's my number one tip for soloing melodically is to learn as many melodies as you possibly can from great composers. What better way is there to learn how to create a beautiful melody than by playing beautiful melodies that have been written? And one of the best things I ever did for my melodicism was to learn all of the old jazz standards from like the 1920s, 1930s, like kind of all the way up until the swing era. There's something about those melodies that I find particularly endearing. They're simple, but really beautiful. They're not hard to learn, which is awesome because a lot of them sort of follow the same form. And that really taught me a lot about melodicism when I started to have all these beautiful melodies just floating around in my ears, in my brain, under my fingers. My playing started to become a lot more melodic and a lot less like cerebral, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to think of a good melody here. Let me think. I mean, there's so many that it's like tough to actually think of one off the top of my head. You know what I'm saying? Uh, let's see. I play in a band that plays a lot of this stuff from early jazz, like trad jazz, I guess you would call it. So one of them could be like Louisiana Fairy Tale. That's actually one of my absolute favorite melodies. I don't know if there's a melody that I enjoy more than Louisiana Fairy Tale. So like how melodic. Oh, I mean, does it get any better than that? Does it get any better than a melody like that? And so many of those tunes, like if you go back and listen to Louis Armstrong and a lot of the stuff that he played, it's so melodic. And if you learn the stuff, you can't help but become a lot more melodic yourself. So, Ethan, I hope that answers the question. I'll try to come up with a couple more melodies that really sort of scratch that itch. And of course, the thing about it is that a lot of the more modern jazz standards are also insanely melodic, right? But I just find that the old school stuff, the music of the 20s and 30s, has a little bit more of that like sing song kind of really memorable melody uh, that I really enjoy. And it was kind of funny the way that I came to that. So I remember when I first started playing with this band called the Soggy Po Boys, and that we play all stuff from that era, but New Orleans music, basically. I was terrible at it because I wanted to do these insanely complicated things, right? I wanted to play modern. And what I started to realize was that, like, oh, that stuff doesn't work. You have to be able to do a lot more with a lot less when you're playing over music like that. Okay. So even if you're not setting out to play that old school music, it actually can be really cool just to study it for those benefits that you get from playing it. So what I discovered was like, oh, they all use the major pentatonic, right? Instead of full diminished scales and things like that. They really rely on learning to play a lot of stuff with that type of scale, that type of sound. Fantastic. It was so good for me, right? Another thing that they do, they don't always play over every single chord change, right? Which is bebop, right? Is like you play over every single chord change, right? That's like the whole ethos of bebop and sort of everything that came after it. That more old school music, you can ignore a lot of the chords and you can, and actually that might be more appropriate to ignore a lot of the chords. So Ethan, I hope that that helps. Maybe dig back into the tradition a little bit more. I can't believe I got 2 degrees in music and nobody ever made me uh, go back and listen to that stuff. It's like in academia, a lot of the times it starts at bebop and goes after that. And that's huge disservice to the music because some of that trad stuff can teach you so many things that you hear on so many places from so many of your favorite players. And it all comes from the music before bebop. So hope that helps, Ethan. Vulcan, thank you, man. Happy to be here talking to you guys. All right. And then Todd asked, Nick, could you discuss incorporating double time into improvisation? Learned a few licks in G7, but wondering a methodology for adding double time to other keys. Yeah, it's a really good question. We all want to be able to play double time, right? My biggest suggestion for this is to start with really, really short double time stuff. Okay. You don't need to be playing full 4-bar double time phrases and think that you're going to be able to do that over a tune. You're just not. You're just not. You have to study for a long time to be able to do that. And a lot of people don't even do that, right? Like think about Joe Henderson. A lot of times he will play these really, really abbreviated double time statements, which are really, really cool, but he doesn't always feel the need to play like 8 bars of double time. Okay. Now, maybe eventually you want to get there, but a really good sort of entry point into double time would be to figure out a really short phrase and try to use it in different places, in different keys, because it's less to deal with, right? It's less notes. Because if you think about one measure of double time is 16 notes. So there's the issue of like you just need more material, period, right? To be able to play like this continuous double time. So if you want to do 4 bars of double time, that is 128 notes that you have. No, that's totally wrong. I'm sorry. It's 64 notes that you have to be able to play in 4 bars. That's a lot of notes, right? So I'm a big fan of using space, okay, and short double time phrases. So you can come up with 1 beat, 4 notes, right? You could play 4 16th notes on beat 1 of each measure in a 4-bar phrase, okay? So if I was doing it over B flat blues, okay, I'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're playing double time. See, and that's the thing. I think a lot of people, they're like, well, you're not really playing double time unless you're playing these long, 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 long double time phrases. But really, double time just means playing 16th notes, right? That's what double time is. You're playing 16th notes. So why not start with less 16th notes and then eventually work your way up, right? Do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then maybe add, let's see, we'll add 2 more notes to it. So it'll be 1E and a 2E, 1E and a 2E, One E and a two E. One E and a two E. There. Uh. Yeah, I messed up on that last one. But you see, now it's way less intimidating. And to tell you the truth, I actually kind of like that better. I actually kind of like the way that sounds better than trying to go. I mean, it sounds cool, but I think it's much more interesting to do something like the. Uh, right? I don't know. Call me crazy, but I think that's more interesting. Yeah, it sounds impressive for a while, but like it's not that interesting. And if you look at some of the best players that can literally play double time for like choruses and choruses and choruses and choruses, they very rarely do it. You know who I think one of the best technicians that I've ever heard on the instrument is Sam Dillon. If you guys don't know who Sam is, go and check him out. He could play double time for like days and days and days and days, and he doesn't. He doesn't. He like pulls off the double time, and then he pulls back, does something else. All right, more double time. He uses it as like an energy thing. Right? So I hope that helps, Todd. Maybe that gives you something to think about. In terms of where you can go with that. And then as far as the like other key thing goes, the biggest thing that I do is I practice things like scale exercises and um, intervals and diatonic chords uh, in all keys. And then it's not hard for me to play in different keys because I know all these different things in all the keys. So what helps me with the keys is not like taking a lick and putting it through all 12 keys. It's more like understanding how to do fundamental things in all 12 keys. I think that's like the biggest thing that's going to make playing in more difficult keys less of an issue. So great question, Todd. Great question. So Ryan asks, what other instruments do you listen to for vocabulary? I've recently started deep diving guitarist for blues vocabulary. Yeah. So Ryan, I don't know if you're a saxophone player or what you play, but yeah, I listen to every instrument I possibly can, right? I listen to a lot of saxophone players, obviously. I love the saxophone. I love saxophone players. And it does a lot for my sound and stuff like that. But man, I'm obsessed with like Clark Terry, Freddie Hubbard, Joe Pass is one of my favorite musicians ever. Um, who else? I mean, there's so many that I can't even, I could go down the list. We could be here for hours talking about all the different people that I listen to. Yeah, but I listen to a ton of instruments. And that thing you said about listening to guitarists for blues vocabulary, that's where it's at, man. Stevie Ray Vaughan. Oh my gosh. If you want to know how to play the blues, listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan play the blues. Listen to Jimi Hendrix play guitar, right? These are people that we wouldn't consider to be like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't spend my time listening to them. They don't play jazz, but man, the vocabulary that you can pick up can actually be really advantageous for you because then you're not going to sound like everybody else that only listens to jazz musicians, right? So, Ryan, I try to listen to every instrument, every single instrument that I possibly can. Yeah, Ryan, I'm the same, man. I mean, I always come back to Dexter. He's like one of my favorite saxophone players of all time, you know? But yeah, if you start to branch out, that's where you could start to get some new ideas, you know? So I love that. I love that you're deep diving into some of those guitar players. I think that that is a really, really, really good idea. And if you get a chance, throw some of the guitar players' names that you've been listening to. Maybe it can give the rest of us some ideas of new places to get some vocabulary. But when I was younger, me and my friend Chris, he's a trumpet player. I'm a sax player, obviously. And we would listen to so much different music, and I really think it helped us as far as building our jazz vocabularies. You know, we used to go to either my house or his house when we got out of high school, and we would play saxophone and trumpet. And one of us would hop on drums, and the other one would play, our horn, and then we'd switch. And then inevitably what we'd end up doing is like we'd end up getting a guitar out and one of us would play guitar and one of us would play drums and we play like Jimi Hendrix stuff. We play Led Zeppelin stuff. We were super into that stuff. And I really, really think it helped us. I think it helped us with our jazz. Well, it helped us with everything, right? To be listening to those other kinds of music and recreating those other kinds of music. uh, I think that can make you a much better instrumentalist. Yeah, Dwayne Allman, BB King, Joe Satriani, all amazing, amazing players. I would say check out some Hendrix and some who's the person I mentioned earlier that I'm completely Stevie Ray Vaughan. Stevie Ray Vaughan for sure. He's like one of the blues masters for sure. Right, Gib, what did you say here? I find it difficult to learn licks off and even more difficult to drop them into solos. Am I doomed? Tips on connecting arpeggios as opposed to dropping in licks. Enjoy the channel. Thanks, man. Yeah, I can't do the lick thing. I tried it for years. I had many teachers that would, my only assignment for the week would be learn a lick in all 12 keys. And I would do it and it would help me here, right? It would help me master some difficult keys, give me some unfamiliar stuff to work on. So that was great. It wasn't like there was no benefit from it. There are certainly a lot of benefits from it. But as far as taking a lick and then actually playing it in a solo, it doesn't work for me. So what do you do? What do you do instead? Right? Well, you already mentioned it, right? So arpeggios, that could be a great thing to do instead of licks. You could come up with your own exercises as far as doing things like using arpeggios and scales, right? That's actually a great, great way to develop some vocabulary, is come up with kind of a particular pattern that you're going to play uh, over every chord, maybe over every measure. So here's an idea. Let's go back to the blues. We'll go back to the B flat blues. Okay. So we'll go 4/8 notes up an arpeggio. And then we'll do 2 notes going down the scale from the 7th. So we'll go 1, 3, 5, 7, 6, 5. Okay. So that's a combination of an arpeggio and a scale. And you could call it a lick. I came up with it and it's very logical. Does that make sense? And I can use it in every measure. So So is it something that I'm playing every time? Is it something that's pre-programmed? Yes. But it is very, very, very logical. Now, think about the million things that we could do with that idea. Instead of starting on the root and playing 1, 3, 5, 7, 6, 5, what if we started on the third and we played 3, 5, 7, 9, 1, 7? that would completely change the sound of it. What? That one's actually really, really cool, right? And I don't think it's a lick. Hey, Steve, good to see you here, man. If you guys don't know about Steve Cortica, you got to go check him out. One of my favorite saxophone players in the world. But getting back to your question, Gib, that's what I would do instead of licks, right? Now think about this. Okay, so we did 1, 3, 5, 7, 6, 5. And then we did 3, 5, 7, 9, 1, 7. Now, could you go through and could you freely switch between those two things? Right? So it's just one simple idea that you could do that has endless, endless, endless iterations. Endless, endless. Okay. And then if you start to incorporate rhythm, oh man, you could work on this for the next year, 8 hours a day, and not exhaust all the possibilities with one tiny little simple germ of an idea. And you see what's different about it than learning a lick, right? Is that you actually have to think and manipulate and develop. You get to use your own voice, if that makes sense. You get to find what you like because as you go through these things, right, some of these ideas that you're going to come up with are going to be bad. There's no way around it, right? Like I come up with a lot of bad ideas, a lot more bad ones than good ones. But you find that one good one and it becomes a part of your language. And see, now you're using logic and your ears and your brain to come up with your own language instead of using somebody else's language, which I think is really cool. Okay. Now, the one sort of caveat to all of this is that you have to transcribe, you have to learn what your favorite players are doing. You can't ignore that part of it. Right. But if you're somebody like me who can learn licks, but it's never natural for you to actually play them in your solos, I think this is a much better sort of avenue to go down. Yeah. And actually, Steve has a great course about melodic cells that are like about this kind of stuff. So he'd be a good person to check out for sure, as far as exactly what I was just talking about. Yeah. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps on that one. Anybody else got any other questions? now that I have that Louisiana Fairy Tale stuck in my head, I can't stop playing it. Now it's like the only thing I can hear. Um, I just love that melody so much. I just went into the studio with a band and we recorded that song, and I'm really excited about the way that it came out. I think it's just one of the most beautiful songs out there. And going back to Ethan's question, man, learning those melodies, that is the way to become a melodic master. Get those things floating around in your head, you just naturally start to play them without even thinking about it, which is just great. All right, we got another question. I think this will be the last one, and then I gotta run to a lesson. So Q asks, how do you keep the changes in mind after you think that you've learned them to a tune? I simply forget them after about 1 week of not playing them. Man, that's real. That's a real thing for sure. So some of the strategies that I use is that I have like a tune that I'm working on, right? Actively. And then I have a list of like 5 tunes that I've learned previously, the last 5 tunes that I've learned. And then what I do is like 1 day a week, I review all of them just to make sure that they're in my playing. So typically I do that on Sundays because Sundays I don't want to work too hard. So that's my day to like just play typically in my schedule. And I'll just go back through and I'll review those tunes. It's just all about review. And then they get to a certain point where you'll never forget that tune or those sets of tunes. But that's the thing is like you can't. So think about it this way. Okay. I say this to my students all the time. If you work on something until you feel like you could just barely get it right, you're setting yourself up for failure. Okay. If your bar is like, okay, I can play through this with no mistakes, I'm done. You're setting yourself up for failure at that point. If your bar is, I'm going to work on this until I can't get it wrong, you're setting yourself up for success, right? And a lot of people just won't do that. And that's why there's fewer people doing this at a really, 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 really high level than a lot of other things in life. And I think it's that. If you're willing to work 3 times longer on something than anybody else, you're gonna win, if that makes sense. So try to change your what you would consider to be done. Okay. And you actually said something telling in your comment. You said, after about 1 week of not playing them, I'm wondering when you stop playing them. Because if you keep playing them for 4 or 6 months, even if it's just once a week, you're constantly reinforcing what that tune is, what the changes are, what it sounds like, right? So I think just keep the tunes on your list of things to review for longer, and eventually you get to that point where uh, it it will become something that would be harder to forget than to remember, if that makes sense. Hopefully that came out right. So hopefully that helps Q. Let me know. All right, Picking Stone, this is going to be our last question for the day. You've also talked about writing etudes. What is your process? Do you just play and record and transcribe? Do you compose phrase by phrase? Do you compose at the piano or on the horn? Yeah, really good questions. Really good questions. For etudes, I typically use this thing and I play until I find a phrase that I really like, and then I write it down. So basically what it is just committing to paper uh, when I find something I like, and then stringing it together into like a chorus long statement or something like that. Now that's very different from when I compose when I'm actually trying to write music. Then it's like a combination of saxophone, piano, drums sometimes, maybe some of the other wind instruments, flute, clarinet, that kind of thing. And typically I will, like if I want to compose something that doesn't sound too saxophony, I'll go to the piano. Or if I'm like fed up with like, I always play the same things on the saxophone, then I'll go to the piano and it'll inspire something different sounding, right? Because well, I'm a lot worse at the piano, but the piano inspires different things to come out of it than the saxophone does. And then if I'm sitting at the piano and I feel the same, oh, yeah, I always play the same thing on piano. I'll go to the saxophone and start composing, or I'll go to another instrument and start composing. But for etudes, I'm generally on this thing. Okay, because when I write etudes, generally it is to benefit me playing this instrument and my soloing on this instrument. Great question. Really, really great question. And yes, I do typically compose phrase by phrase. That's usually my process. Because again, it'll be like I'll sit down, I'll think, I'll play a bunch of different things until I find something that I really, really like. So I might sit down and play a phrase. It might be okay, but if I'm going to commit it to paper, I want it to be just awesome, right? That's sort of the difference between writing an etude and just improvising. You don't get a second chance. You don't get a chance to refine when you're improvising. But when I'm writing etudes, that's my time to just like, all right, I'm going to make this the most killing, awesome thing that I possibly can. Cool. Great questions, y'all. Thanks for hanging out. This was really fun. I'm going to try to do this more often. So be on the lookout for notifications. If you turn on notifications on the channel, you'll know when I go live. But thanks for all the great questions. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate y'all. And we'll see you on another video soon or another live stream soon. Okay. Have a good week, everybody. Talk to you soon.